Okay, so let's talk about what are some, how should you have a professional resume. So some of the key things is, of course, the first thing you have in a professional resume is the experience. And it's always good to have this experiences. Okay, where did you work, between what to what date, which company, and what was your position there. So like that, you can have that in a reverse chronological order, meaning that your latest position would come first, the last position that you held or you're still working in, and then go to the previous one and the previous until you go back to your first job. Of course, if you have too many companies that you work with, like 20 or something, then you might have to combine it in some way, or just reduce the number of lines. Because overall in a resume, the best thing for a resume is you want to have it about not more than 2 to 3 pages. Because if you look at it, companies, hiring managers and recruiters, generally they just spend a few seconds in a resume, because most positions receive hundreds of resumes. And most times each resume is scanned for a few seconds, and then it's either put in the follow up further pile, or it's just discarded. So you always want to make sure your resume is about not more than, ideal would be 2 pages, or you could go up to 3 pages long. And once you have your experience in the reverse chronological order, starting with the last position that you had, and so on. The other section that you want to have in your resume is, of course, the education. What have you done? What was your bachelor's degree? What was the degree you attained, between when to when, and in which college was it completed. So all your education, you can start with your the highest qualification. Like suppose you have a master's degree, you can put that first and then go to your bachelor's degree. So it's only the formal education here that you need to put. The certificates and all that, any other training that you've done, it can come in a different section. So now you have your experience, and then you have your, of course, you have your experience and you have your education. And then you can have another section called certifications and training. And here you can have, suppose you have some Google certifications, or you had some training in your company that you previously worked, and then you have a certificate, or you completed some industry certifications, maybe you have a Oracle certification or Microsoft certification. All these can be listed under certifications and training. So basically you can list what is the certification and when did you complete it, and perhaps if there's a great score that you would like to display, then you can show that. It's not mandatory. And so these are 3 sections that you would normally have in a resume. And in addition to this, another thing you could generally in a resume, of course, one other thing is right in the first page, make sure you have your name, and then the typical position. Like suppose you're a team lead in a company, then put that team lead or software developer. Then you can just put that. Okay, so you have your name, and then your typical position, the type of position that you identify yourself with, or in the kind of position that you're looking for. You can just put that as the title in your resume. And so that's, like supposing, what if you want to apply for multiple titles, QA engineer position, and you also want to apply for a QA lead position. In that case, what you do is you just try to have 2 different versions of your resume that have these 2 different titles, and depending on the position you're applying for, use the right resume. And when you do this, always you have to make sure that you clearly note down what version of your resume was sent to which company. Just keep a good record of that, so when they talk to you, you know exactly what you've presented to them, so that you can be consistent with information you've already provided them, because you always want to stay consistent with what is in your resume, of course, because that's how you're presenting yourself to the company. They don't know who you are, so everything that you do should be consistent, of course, right? Okay, so now you have your name and you have your title, and generally in terms of the address and phone number that they can reach you, I like to always put it in the footer. The document you have, just put it in the footer, and with much smaller fonts, because first thing is address and phone number only become important when they really like what they're seeing about your experience and your qualifications, and then that's when they will look at your contact details. So it can be in a smaller font in the footer. That works perfectly well. And in addition to this, experience, education, a lot of resumes have them. But the other thing you need to do in addition, and then of course your title, name and all, and your address and phone number and email address. In addition to this, why should they hire? What's so unique about you? So to show them what's so unique and special about you, you can just mention what are your accomplishments, what are some challenging things you did, or it could be a lot of times when you mention your accomplishments, try not to be vague. I was a great developer in this project. Instead of saying something like that, you could say, I completed the project which usually would take 180 days. I completed it within 30 days. So always try to provide sufficient data, quantify things. Or I improve the quality of the product by 90% or 80%. Or I increase the team productivity by 60%. Or I reduce the man-hours on the project by 50%. So it could be either a percentage, or it could be a number, or supposing you worked on a large project where there were millions of users who were using the application. You could say, I developed a software project which was in production being used by over 2 million customers. So this way just quantify it, so all your accomplishments are clearly mentioned in a clearly quantifiable way, wherever applicable. I mean, in some cases you may not have numbers specifically, but always wherever you can, just mention numbers and quantify it. So that's it. So this is what you need in your resume: your experience, reverse chronological order, your education starting with the highest and the remaining education, then you have your certifications and training, and then your name and your title, and your accomplishments. And also, because especially in technology resumes, the other section which becomes very important is technologies used. Generally, I like to have a section called tools and technologies used. So that here you can list what are all the, like supposing you work with different IDEs, like supposing you used JBuilder or perhaps Visual Studio and different tools that you use. You could list them under, okay, these are development tools. Then you could have what are the operating systems you work with. Maybe you could say, okay, I work with Red Hat Linux or and so on, like Ubuntu, and then I've worked with Windows so and so, and then all this. You can list all the operating systems that you work with, and then you could say, okay, what are the productivity tools? Supposing you worked with different Microsoft Office tools, you could list those, and then programming languages, things like that, depending on your kind of the position that you're applying for. Just you could list the different technologies that you work with. Perhaps you work with different cloud platforms. Like suppose you basically work with different cloud platforms. You're a DevOps person. You could say, okay, cloud platforms, and you could say AWS and then Google Cloud and so on. So technologies and tools is another great section to have, because especially on the first page of your resume. In the first page, have your name, title, your accomplishments, education, technologies and tools. Always have them on the first page, and if there is any extra room in the first page, just try to have at least one or two experiences, or at least one experience there. And then the next page, you can move on to all your other experience. And because education, everybody wants to know what kind of education does the candidate have. So instead of having it in the last page, it's good to have it in the first page if you can. Okay, so now that we have the general format of the resume, let's talk about a few different questions about resumes. Like, okay, what if you're a new graduate, and then in there you don't have experience, then what do you do? What do you list, right? In those cases, try to apply for some internships, and then instead of experience, just Describe some of the great projects that you did during your internships, any projects that you did in your college, real world projects that you did. You could mention those. Always try to present whatever best you can to show them that you can actually do the job well. Okay, so this is something you can do. So if you're a new graduate, for the first position, you could try to get an internship instead of directly applying for a job. Or even during your last year of college, if you had a chance and you got an internship, put that in your resume. And then, okay, let's go to the second one. Okay, what if you have an experience gap? You have maybe 2-3 years of experience, and then you had some gap in your experience for some reason, personal reasons, or whatever. You didn't work for a year. Let's just imagine you didn't work for about a year. In that case, resumes is all about perceptions. Like supposing you did some important certifications or some training or some education, or you build some app and you put it on App Store. Just put those, and that's what I did during that period. And or you build some website. Whatever you did, just put it out there. To show that you were, or maybe you worked on some open source project or something, or volunteered somewhere. Just put whatever you did during that gap, so that it's clear that you've actually been up to date with your skills. Of course, once in a while, a little bit of gap, it's all about perceptions, but just try to have something. Either you volunteer somewhere or you develop an app, put it out there. Just have something to show that you were actually up to date with your skills, even if during the time when you were not actually professionally working. Okay. And we already talked about the length of the resume, 2 to 3 pages. And what if you're applying for multiple job titles? We already spoke about that as well. So perhaps you're applying for a QA development lead, and then you're applying for a senior developer position, and then you're applying, let's just take, for example, you're applying for DevOps. Just have a different version of your resume and just keep track of what version of your resume you sent to which company or to which recruiter. This will be very important when you actually talk to them. And what if you're applying for the kind of job that you're applying for is a little bit different from your previous last 1 or 2 positions? In that case, and you actually want a slightly different position this time, then what you do is, one way to project it, like supposing you're a senior developer and you want to become a team lead, right? In your accomplishments, just mention so many things that you did which normally a team lead would do, but you were in a position of a senior developer, but you actually did so many things which a team lead would do. In your accomplishments on the first page, list those, and then put your title as team lead. So that way, it'll be clear that you're actually qualified to take up the position of a team lead. So these are some ways you can get your next position to be a little bit an upgrade to what you already have. Or if you have some additional certifications and courses that you did, you could put all those to just bump up and then to give an upgrade to your next position. And so these are, and then supposing you don't have any of the certifications or anything, you could always volunteer somewhere, or if you want to gain some specific type of maybe technical experience in a particular area, if you're able to get some volunteer position or a certification. So that's one way you can get an upgrade to your next position. So, okay, that's it. So that's it, and then this is how you could. This is a typical professional resume format, and different ways of how you can handle a number of variety of issues to make your resume super presentable for your next great career position.